When Andy Griffith died in 2012, millions of fans expected a massive public farewell for one of television's most iconic stars. Instead, something very different happened. There was no grand Hollywood memorial, no lengthy funeral arrangements. In fact, just 4 hours after his death, Griffith had already been buried. The decision was so unusual that it immediately sparked curiosity across the country. Why was everything done so quickly? And what exactly did those closest to Griffith know that the public didn't? As more information later emerged about his health and autopsy findings, the story surrounding his final hours became even more unsettling. Andy Griffith's unexpected beginning. Andy Samuel Griffith would eventually become one of the biggest television stars America had ever seen. But when he entered the world in June of 1926, born to Carl and Geneva Griffith in the small town of Mount Airy, North Carolina, fame was the furthest thing from anyone's mind. His family was painfully poor. In fact, things were so difficult financially that baby Andy had to stay with relatives for a period of time because his parents simply couldn't care for him on their own at first. And even after he finally moved back home, life was far from comfortable. Eventually, Andy's father managed to save enough money to buy the family a house. The problem was, the house was practically empty. There was barely any furniture inside. Andy's first bed wasn't a crib or even a proper mattress. His parents placed him inside a dresser drawer to sleep. That was the world Andy Griffith grew up in. Hard work, limited money, and constant struggle. But somewhere in the middle of all that hardship, he discovered something that gave him an escape: music. As a boy, Andy was shy and reserved. He hated drawing attention to himself and often tried to stay invisible, especially growing up on what many considered the wrong side of the tracks in Mount Airy. But everything began to change once he realized he could make people laugh. For the first time in his life, he found confidence. The quiet kid who once tried to hide suddenly wanted an audience. He discovered that performing gave him something he'd never really had before: a sense of belonging. And once that spark lit, there was no turning back. By high school, Griffith had fully immersed himself in music and theater. He joined drama productions, sharpened his singing voice, and spent countless hours developing his talent. One of the biggest influences in his young life was Ed Mickey, a minister at his church who taught him how to play instruments and helped nurture his love of music. Ironically, Mickey almost guided him down a completely different path. After graduating high school in 1944, Griffith enrolled at the University of North Carolina with plans to study theology and eventually become a Moravian preacher. For a while, it genuinely seemed like the stage might lose him to the pulpit. But deep down, performing kept calling his name. Before long, Griffith changed course and pursued a degree in music instead. At UNC, he became a standout performer and one of the school's brightest personalities. He led the university's chapter of Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia, one of the country's oldest and most prestigious music fraternities, while starring in student productions like The Mikado, The Gondoliers, and HMS Pinafore. By then, it was obvious he had something special. Still, Hollywood wasn't waiting for him just yet. After college, Griffith took what looked like a far more ordinary path. He became a music and drama teacher at Goldsboro High School in North Carolina, spending his days helping students discover their own talents instead of chasing his own dreams. And by all accounts, he was an exceptional teacher. One of his students, Carl Castle, would later become one of the most recognizable voices in NPR history. At the same time, Griffith was building a quiet family life. In 1949, he married Barbara Bray Edwards, and together they adopted 2 children. Life seemed stable and grounded, far removed from the bright lights of show business. But beneath the surface, Griffith still carried the same hunger to perform that had first appeared when he was just a nervous kid trying to make classmates laugh. No matter what life threw at him, he never lost his sense of humor. And strangely enough, it was comedy, not television, that first turned Andy Griffith into a national name. In 1953, he released a spoken-word comedy monologue called What It Was Football. The routine followed a naive country preacher trying to understand the chaos of a football game for the very first time. The character felt incredibly authentic because in many ways it reflected pieces of Griffith himself. The Southern upbringing, the storytelling charm, the wide-eyed perspective. Audiences loved it. The record exploded in popularity, climbing all the way to number 9 on the charts and introducing millions of Americans to Griffith's unmistakable voice and comedic timing. Suddenly, doors started opening everywhere. That success led him to television and eventually to Broadway, where his career truly took off in 1955 with No Time for Sergeants. Griffith played Will Stockdale, an innocent country boy trying to survive life in the Air Force, and audiences immediately fell in love with him. Critics couldn't stop talking about his natural charisma. Reviewers noted that he barely even needed dialogue to command attention. The New York Times famously observed that Griffith could get laughs simply by walking onto the stage and looking at the audience. He became a sensation almost overnight, but even as his star rose higher, there always seemed to be one final hurdle he couldn't quite clear. His performance earned him a Tony nomination in 1956, but he lost the award to Ed Begley. It became a frustrating pattern throughout his career, always respected, always admired, but often finishing just short of the biggest prize. Still, Griffith kept moving forward, and then came the role that changed everything. When legendary director Elia Kazan began searching for the lead actor in A Face in the Crowd, he immediately saw something unique in Andy Griffith. Kazan believed Griffith possessed an authenticity that couldn't be faked. He later explained that Griffith embodied the real Native American country boy, and that quality was exactly what the film needed. But the role pushed Griffith into uncomfortable territory. His character, Larry Lonesome Rhodes, was manipulative, explosive, and morally corrupt, the complete opposite of the warm, friendly man Griffith was in real life. According to Kazan, Griffith struggled so much with the aggressive scenes that the director actually kept him drunk during the film's climactic sequence just to loosen him up enough emotionally. Because off camera, Andy Griffith simply wasn't a hostile person. By nearly every account, he genuinely wanted to get along with everyone around him. Then, in 1958, Griffith returned to familiar territory when No Time for Sergeants made its jump to the big screen. But this time, something important changed. During production, he formed a friendship with fellow actor Don Knotts. That connection would become one of the most beloved comedy partnerships in television history. Still, Griffith continued testing himself. He returned to Broadway in Destry Rides Again, starring alongside Dolores Gray. Once again, audiences embraced him. Once again, critics praised him. And once again, Tony Award season ended in disappointment after he lost the award to Jackie Gleason. Then came the setback that nearly ended everything. Following several successful years on stage and screen, Griffith starred in the 1958 comedy Onionhead, expecting it to become another major hit. Instead, the film crashed spectacularly. Critics hated it. Audiences ignored it. The project became such a humiliating failure that Griffith seriously questioned whether Hollywood was even the right place for him anymore. The experience shook him badly. So badly, in fact, that Andy Griffith made a decision that sounded almost unthinkable for a rising star at the time. He walked away from Hollywood altogether. And strangely enough, that decision would end up changing his life forever. The Mayberry Secrets fans never knew. After the crushing disappointment of Onionhead, Andy Griffith stepped away from Hollywood and turned back toward television. At the time, it probably seemed like a retreat. In reality, it was the move that would completely change his life. His comeback began with a guest appearance on Make Room for Daddy, starring Danny Thomas. The episode introduced viewers to a sleepy little town called Mayberry and a local sheriff named Andy Taylor. But this first version of Taylor was nothing like the warm, folksy character audiences would later fall in love with. This Andy Taylor had a sharp edge to him. The story begins with Danny Thomas driving through Mayberry when he accidentally runs a stop sign he never even noticed. Sheriff Taylor quickly pulls him over and issues a fine. But once Andy realizes Danny works in show business and likely has money to spare, he shamelessly raises the amount. Danny is outraged and threatens to report him to the Justice of the Peace, only to discover that Andy himself holds that position too. Frustrated, Danny then tries taking the story to the local newspaper, but that plan falls apart just as quickly when he learns Andy also runs the Mayberry Gazette. In this tiny town, Andy Taylor practically controlled everything. The whole setup played like a sly comedy about small-town power, with Griffith leaning much harder into sarcasm and mischief than he ever would later on The Andy Griffith Show. By the end of the episode, the two men managed to settle their differences, but something important had already happened behind the scenes. Audiences loved Mayberry. That one appearance became the foundation for The Andy Griffith Show, a series that would soon turn Griffith into one of the most recognizable faces on television. But while the finished product felt warm and effortless on screen, life behind the cameras was a very different story. According to multiple cast members, Griffith loved joking around on set. Between takes, the actors often sang songs, traded stories, and pulled pranks on each other like a big extended family. Griffith thrived in that loose, playful environment. Frances Bavier, however, absolutely hated it. Bavier, who played the beloved Aunt Bee, reportedly found the constant joking unprofessional and irritating. While the rest of the cast laughed and carried on between scenes, she usually kept to herself. The divide became especially noticeable during production of Mayberry RFD, the sequel series that followed The Andy Griffith Show. At one point, tensions exploded with George Lindsay, the actor who played Goober Pyle. Lindsay had a habit of using rough language around the set, something Bavier could not stand. One day, after hearing enough profanity, she became so angry that she reportedly smacked him with her umbrella. The clashes revealed a deeper problem simmering underneath the surface. Bavier often felt the cast, especially Griffith, treated the set too casually. Griffith, meanwhile, seemed genuinely confused by her coldness toward him. No matter how friendly or accommodating he tried to be, the relationship between them never fully warmed. Years after the show ended, Griffith and Ron Howard decided to visit Bavier at her home in North Carolina, hoping for a heartfelt reunion. Instead, they were met with an icy reception and turned away at the door. The rejection stunned Griffith. It wasn't until much later, after Bavier became seriously ill, that she finally reached out to apologize for the emotional distance she had kept between them all those years. Meanwhile, another relationship on the show was quietly becoming legendary. When The Andy Griffith Show first began, Griffith fully expected to be the main comedic force. But after only a handful of episodes, he realized something important. Don Knotts was operating on another level. Knotts, with his nervous energy and frantic delivery as Barney Fife, consistently stole every scene he appeared in. Griffith recognized it almost immediately and made a smart adjustment. Instead of competing for laughs, he shifted into the straight man role, allowing Knotts' chaos to shine even brighter. The chemistry between them became television magic. Unfortunately, Griffith had earlier convinced Knotts the series would likely only last 5 seasons. Believing that timeline, Knotts signed a separate film contract elsewhere. So when the show continued beyond that point, Griffith had little choice but to let his best friend leave the series. It became one of the biggest turning points in the show's history. Even decades later, Griffith still spoke about those years with enormous affection, once calling that stretch with Knotts the best 5 years of his life. Not every on-screen partnership worked quite so naturally, though. During the first season, actress Eleanor Donahue played Andy Taylor's romantic interest. The problem was simple. There was absolutely no spark between them. Donahue later admitted she never felt much chemistry during their scenes together, while Griffith openly acknowledged that showing affection on camera simply did not come naturally to him. Their romance ended up feeling stiff and awkward, and viewers noticed. But while Griffith struggled to fake romance on screen in some cases, rumors suggested he had no problem finding it behind the scenes. After divorcing Barbara Bray Edwards in the early 1970s, Griffith married Greek actress Solika Kasuto in 1973. The marriage lasted until 1981, though very little about their relationship ever became public. At the same time, stories continued circulating about Griffith's close connection with actress Anita Corsott, who played Helen Crump on the show. Their chemistry appeared effortless on screen because, according to later reports, it may not have been acting at all. In the book Andy and Don, The Making of a Friendship, it was revealed that Griffith and Corsott allegedly carried on a long-running affair during their years working together. Cast and crew members reportedly knew about the relationship, making it one of the show's worst-kept secrets. Still, not all of Griffith's relationships with co-stars carried drama. Ron Howard always remembered Griffith as deeply supportive during his childhood years on the show. Howard once recalled proudly pitching a creative idea as a young boy and feeling thrilled when the writers actually used it. When he excitedly told Griffith about it, the veteran actor teased him with a quick joke before immediately getting back to work. That balance of humor and mentorship made a lasting impression on Howard. But Griffith's temper occasionally surfaced too. During the second season of The Andy Griffith Show, viewers suddenly noticed Sheriff Taylor wearing a large bandage on his hand. The injury wasn't part of the script. Behind the scenes, Griffith had reportedly become so angry during an off-camera moment that he punched a wall and broke his hand. On screen, the injury was explained away as part of Sheriff Taylor's law enforcement duties. Off-screen, though, it hinted at the growing frustrations Griffith carried quietly beneath his easygoing public image. And perhaps nothing frustrated him more than awards season. Despite being the face of one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history, Griffith constantly watched his co-stars receive the recognition that somehow always escaped him. Don Knotts won multiple Emmy Awards for playing Barney Fife. Frances Xavier earned an Emmy as well. Andy Griffith, the heart and soul of the entire series, never even received a nomination. After years of carrying the show, the disappointment became impossible to ignore, the failure that nearly ended him. By 1967, Andy Griffith knew it was time to leave Mayberry behind. For nearly a decade, The Andy Griffith Show had dominated television, turning its small-town charm into a cultural phenomenon. CBS desperately wanted more seasons, and from a business standpoint, walking away made almost no sense. The show was still wildly successful, audiences adored it, and Griffith remained one of the most recognizable stars in America. But after years of playing Sheriff Andy Taylor, Griffith felt the pull to try something new. He wanted films again, he wanted fresh challenges, and maybe deep down, he wanted to prove he was more than just the friendly sheriff from Mayberry. So despite the network's pleas, Griffith stepped away from the spotlight role that had defined his career. Still, he didn't completely abandon the world he helped build. Behind the scenes, he stayed involved as an executive producer, while the series transitioned into a reworked continuation called Mayberry RFD. He even returned for a handful of appearances, including one of the most important moments in the show's history, Andy Taylor finally marrying Helen Crump. For longtime fans, it felt like a proper goodbye. And what a goodbye it was. When The Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968 after 8 remarkable seasons, it finished as the #1 show in America. That almost never happens in television. Most hit series slowly fade, lose viewers, or limp toward cancellation. But Griffith's show walked away at the absolute peak of its power. Even more impressive, throughout its entire run, the series never dropped below 7th place in the Nielsen ratings. Week after week, year after year, Mayberry remained one of television's most beloved destinations. Naturally, CBS wasn't about to let that audience disappear overnight. That's where Mayberry RFD came in. The new series shifted focus away from Andy Taylor and centered on a widowed farmer named Sam Jones and his young son Mike. The heartwarming father-son relationship became the emotional core of the show, while familiar faces from the original series stayed around to help audiences feel at home. Frances Xavier returned as Aunt Bee. George Lindsay continued bringing goofy charm as Goober Pyle. Jack Dodson came back as Howard Sprague. And every now and then, Andy Taylor would briefly reappear, reminding viewers that Mayberry was still his town, even if he was no longer standing at the center of it. Meanwhile, Griffith spent the next several years trying to create another hit of his own. Unfortunately, nothing quite clicked. He launched a production company in 1972 and starred in several television projects, including Headmaster, The New Andy Griffith Show, and Salvage One. Each new series carried hope that audiences would embrace him all over again, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't recreate the magic of Mayberry. The truth was simple. Audiences loved Andy Griffith, but they especially loved him as Andy Taylor. Escaping the shadow of that role turned out to be much harder than leaving it behind. And then came another crushing setback. After years away from movies, Griffith signed a major multi-picture deal with Universal Studios, hoping to finally relaunch his film career. The first project under that agreement was Angel in My Pocket, a comedy drama that was supposed to mark a fresh beginning. Instead, it became another disappointment. When Griffith saw the finished film, he hated it so much that he refused to continue honoring the rest of his studio contract. It was a bold move, but by that point in his career, Griffith had become increasingly stubborn about protecting his creative instincts. That stubbornness soon sparked another battle. While developing the television series Adams of Eagle Lake, Griffith found himself clashing heavily with network executives almost immediately. The network wanted fast-paced action, car chases, and explosive drama. Griffith wanted quieter storytelling with emotional depth and realism. The two visions could not coexist. After only 2 episodes filmed in Griffith's preferred style, the project completely collapsed. Ironically, those episodes had actually earned strong ratings, making the cancellation even more frustrating. Still, even as projects failed around him, Griffith was quietly earning something he had chased for years: respect as a serious dramatic actor. In 1981, he delivered one of the darkest performances of his career in Murder in Texas, playing the devastated father of a murder victim. The role was miles away from the warm-hearted charm audiences usually associated with him, and critics took notice. At long last, Griffith received his first and only Primetime Emmy nomination. True to form, though, he still didn't win. But the role opened another door. A few years later, Griffith appeared in the 1984 miniseries Fatal Vision as a sharp, intelligent attorney. The performance caught the attention of television executives, especially NBC President Brandon Tartikoff, who immediately saw enormous potential in Griffith playing a courtroom lawyer full-time. There was just one problem. At the exact moment his career finally seemed ready for another breakthrough, Griffith's health suddenly collapsed. In 1983, he was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that temporarily paralyzed him from the knees down. Almost overnight, the energetic performer who had spent decades commanding stages and television sets found himself unable to walk. For 7 painful months, recovery became his full-time job. The illness could have ended his career entirely. Instead, it became the beginning of one final comeback. After months of rehabilitation and determination, Griffith slowly regained his strength and returned to television as defense attorney Ben Matlock in the legal drama Matlock. The series premiered in 1986 and quickly became another massive hit. Nearly 20 years after leaving Mayberry, Griffith had reinvented himself all over again. Ben Matlock was a completely different kind of hero. He was older, sharper, more stubborn, and far more confrontational than Andy Taylor had ever been. In the courtroom, Matlock cornered witnesses with relentless precision, slowly dismantling lies until guilty suspects finally cracked under pressure. Griffith delivered those scenes with incredible authority. What audiences didn't realize was how physically demanding the role actually was. Even while starring on Matlock, Griffith was still dealing with the lingering effects of partial paralysis. Many of those dramatic courtroom scenes required him to stand for hours wearing knee braces while delivering long, emotionally charged speeches. And those famous monologues were no joke. According to co-star Nancy Stafford, Griffith carried note cards everywhere and spent entire weekends memorizing dialogue so thoroughly that he often nailed massive courtroom speeches in a single take. Crew members reportedly applauded him after particularly difficult scenes because of how flawlessly he performed them. He made it all look effortless. Meanwhile, viewers became fascinated by Ben Matlock's obsession with hot dogs, one of the character's trademark quirks. Off-camera, though, Griffith himself was far more health-conscious. His favorite on-set snack was apple slices and peanut butter, and he reportedly insisted production always keep them nearby. In many ways, Griffith and Matlock were very different people. In fact, Griffith initially disliked the character altogether. He found Matlock vain, cheap, and irritating during the early stages of development. Over time, however, he slowly grew attached to the gruff Southern lawyer, especially after shaping the role more closely to his own instincts. That process led to frequent clashes with producer Dean Hargrove. Griffith wanted darker stories and more emotional realism. Hargrove preferred keeping the series lighter and broadly likable for mainstream audiences. Eventually, the two men found a balance. Griffith got opportunities to stretch his dramatic abilities while the show maintained the comforting mystery formula fans loved. And through it all, Griffith pushed himself relentlessly. During the original NBC run of Matlock, he spent years commuting between California and his home in Manteo, North Carolina, where his family lived. Every Friday after filming wrapped, he boarded a plane home. By Monday morning, he was back on set and ready to work again. The exhausting cycle continued for 6 straight years. By the early 1990s, the non-stop travel, long hours, and physical demands were beginning to wear him down, which made what happened next feel both triumphant and heartbreaking at the exact same time. Andy Griffith was buried. 4 hours after he died, his autopsy revealed why. After 6 successful seasons, Matlock finally began showing small cracks in the ratings. The series was still popular, but television was changing fast, and NBC's new leadership had a very different vision for the network's future. Executives wanted younger audiences, flashier shows, faster pacing. To them, Matlock suddenly looked old-fashioned. So despite the show's loyal fan base and steady success, NBC abruptly canceled it. For many actors, that kind of decision would have marked the beginning of the end. But Andy Griffith wasn't ready to walk away from Ben Matlock just yet. Instead of accepting defeat, he got to work. Griffith helped negotiate a deal to move the entire series over to ABC, giving the courtroom drama a second life. And he came up with an idea that benefited everyone involved: relocate production to North Carolina. The move dramatically cut costs for the network while also giving Griffith something he desperately needed after years of exhausting travel. For the first time in years, he no longer had to spend every weekend flying back and forth across the country just to be with his family. It turned out to be a smart decision on every level. Thanks to that move, Matlock stayed on the air for 3 additional seasons, allowing the series to end on its own terms instead of fading away overnight. Around the same time, Griffith was finally finding stability in his personal life too. Back in 1983, he had married actress Cindy Knight after meeting her during a production of The Lost Colony, the same outdoor drama Griffith himself had once performed in years earlier. There was something fitting about that connection, almost like life had quietly brought him full circle. Unlike his previous marriages, this relationship lasted. Knight remained by his side for the rest of his life, giving Griffith a sense of peace and companionship that seemed to ground him during his later years. And even after decades of television success, Griffith never drifted far from the thing that first gave him confidence as a boy growing up in North Carolina: music. Over the years, he recorded multiple gospel and country albums, pouring genuine warmth into old hymns and traditional songs. One of his biggest musical successes came in 1996 with I Love to Tell the Story. 25 timeless hymns. The album struck a powerful chord with audiences. It eventually went platinum and earned Griffith something that had somehow eluded him throughout his legendary acting career: a Grammy Award. Ironically, music brought him the trophy television never quite did. Still, even in his later years, Griffith occasionally found himself tangled in bizarre situations that sounded almost too strange to be real. In 2006, a man from Wisconsin legally changed his name to Andrew Jackson Griffith and launched a campaign for sheriff. The real Andy Griffith was not amused. Believing the man was deliberately exploiting his fame and the public's association with Sheriff Andy Taylor, Griffith filed a lawsuit. But in a strange twist worthy of television itself, the court ruled against him. A judge sided with the other Griffith on First Amendment grounds, creating the surreal image of Andy Griffith essentially losing a legal battle to someone pretending to be Andy Griffith. Through it all, though, Griffith continued showing the same resilience that had carried him through setbacks his entire life. In 2000, he underwent quadruple bypass surgery but recovered remarkably well. Then, in 2007, he suffered another health scare after fracturing his hip in a fall. Each time, he bounced back. But by 2012, his body had finally begun slowing down. That July, Griffith suffered a heart attack at his North Carolina home. The following day, at 86 years old, the beloved television icon quietly passed away. The news hit millions of fans hard. For generations of viewers, Andy Griffith represented comfort. Whether he was playing Sheriff Andy Taylor calmly guiding Mayberry through another small-town problem or Ben Matlock dismantling criminals in a courtroom, he carried a warmth that made audiences feel safe. And yet, despite his enormous fame, the circumstances surrounding his funeral surprised many people. There was no massive Hollywood memorial, no highly publicized public viewing, no grand celebrity farewell. Instead, Griffith's burial happened with extraordinary speed. Just hours after his death, his body was buried on the family property on Roanoke Island in North Carolina. Reports noted that the burial took place so quickly that even some loved ones struggled to arrive in time, including his daughter, who was traveling from Colorado. The unusual timing sparked widespread curiosity. CNN later reported that Griffith's funeral arrangements had been carefully planned in advance and carried out exactly according to his wishes. Officials within North Carolina's funeral industry acknowledged how uncommon such a rapid burial was, especially for someone so famous, but emphasized that the family's decisions were fully respected. For many fans, the speed of the burial only deepened the mystery surrounding Griffith's intensely private nature. Over the years, speculation also emerged surrounding reports about asbestos problems in one of Griffith's former homes and whether those environmental issues may have contributed to earlier health struggles. Some publications attempted to connect the reports to his diagnosis of Guillain-Barré syndrome decades earlier, though no official evidence ever established a direct link between the two. In the end, though, Griffith's final wishes appeared consistent with the way he had increasingly chosen to live his life, quietly, privately, and far away from unnecessary spectacle.